Shalom, everyone. Today I am going to talk about a topic which is a hot topic, and that is the virgin birth. The virgin birth. Man, I'll tell you what, we have a lot of false teachers in our modern day. And how do you know that somebody's telling you the truth or whether or not they're false? A lot of times it has to do with whether or not they're telling you something that has been taught for millennium and understood to be a certain way for centuries, literally thousands of years. If they're coming against that, then that's a flag. 2 Peter 2 tells us this. And by the way, I'm going to run through this. I'm not going to edit this like I do my radio show. So, I may seem a little clumsy here and there, but I really don't know how to edit on videos yet. I'm still learning how to do things, but the fact that I'm just doing the video right now is enough. Please just bear with me. I'm sure that somebody out there is going to learn something. And if you do, let me say this right now. Click subscribe, share this video if you want to help somebody else to come to the same understanding. Do all that. Click like, comments. I'll take your comments. I'd be glad to have your comments. I'm ready for the the rebukes and the rebuttals and the rebellions, and I've put up with that enough. So I know very well what's coming after I make a video like this. You make a video, you put yourself out there for somebody to take pop shots at you. Okay, well, you go right ahead. That's fine. I'm ready for you. No problem. All right, so let's do this. First of all, Scripture tells us in 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 1, "But there were false prophets also among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you, who privily shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that bought them, and bring upon themselves swift destruction." We're also told in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3, "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away." So one of the signs of the times that we're in is that there is an incredible falling away going on. And we've got teachers out there. I say this lightly when I say teachers, because you've got people out here that they take these Hebrew names that their mother and father didn't give them, these lofty names of important people in the Bible, and they dress up to look so official. They put their Talit Katan on and they pose and look holy and doing all these things. They take a name like Daniel Melchizedek. It's kind of like Smuckers. Remember that commercial? With a name like Smuckers, it has to be good. So Daniel Melchizedek, with a name like that, everything that comes out of his mouth has got to be the truth, right? Right. They speak Torah, Torah this, Torah that. And oh, by the way, that Yeshua guy, he's just a regular guy. No such thing as virgin birth. And then they skip on to something else. Wolves in sheep's clothing is what we have among us. So, okay, so this video, I'm calling it Virgin Birth, True or False. So let's take a look at this. Let's go to the verse that everybody wants to argue about. Isaiah 7:14. This is where Isaiah says that a virgin shall conceive and bear a son. Of course, the Hebrew has the word alma, and that's the argument that everybody has. This has nothing to do with the Messiah, because alma simply means a young maiden. But if you have respect for the law of first use, you're going to understand that Hebraically, the Jewish understanding of this verse is that, in fact, alma is synonymous with betula, the Hebrew word that is specific for virgin. And I'm going to show that to you in a minute, the first use of it. And also, if you have respect for the rule, the interpretation rule of Gezerah Shiva, which is taking common words and phrases and comparing them in the Torah, then you will come to an understanding that the ancients had concerning this verse. First of all, before I go into that, let me tell you a little bit about what's in Isaiah 7:14 in the form of an embedded code. Just about 3 decades ago, during our computer age, there was a phenomenon, as they call it, that was discovered among mathematicians at Harvard, Yale, and the Hebrew University. And what they found, encoded in prophecies, were messages that were relevant to what you were reading about. And numerous times, the 4-letter spelling of Yeshua's Hebrew name Yud, Shin, Vav, Ayin is showing up in these places. They say the average or the ratio of this being coincidental is 1 to 50 quadrillion. 1 to 50 quadrillion. So keep that in mind as I share these codes with you. In Isaiah 7:14, that they say has nothing to do with the Messiah, even though it says Emmanuel, God with us will be a title of him. Never mind that. But in the word Alma, starting with the mem, do this yourself if you have a Hebrew Bible. All you anti-missionaries, do this for yourself. If you've got a Hebrew Bible, this is not a long one. It's only 17 letters apart, so it's easy to find. Some of these things are hundreds of letters apart, but this one's very tight. So go to your Hebrew Bible, look at the word Alma in Isaiah 7:14. Start with the mem and count 17 letters from right to left from that mem. And it will spell out, if you keep doing it, you keep going until you come to the end of this phrase, it spells out Mashiach Kavan. Now, Mashiach Kavan translates to Messiah, the sacrificial wafer. Also, I want to show you something. On this board here, we have the Greek word for virgin, Parthenos. And why do I have it on the board? Because in the Septuagint, which was written by 70 Hebrew scholars about 250 years BC, those 70 men came to the verse in Isaiah 7:14, and they saw the Hebrew word Alma, young maiden, and they chose to go with the virgin exclusive Greek word Parthenos. All right, now an interesting point. There was another version of the Septuagint that was written, and I'm going to read this to you at length. This is from Messiah Conspiracy by Philip Moore. He has a portion in here that talks about a number of very interesting things. One of them has to do with what was done with the Septuagint by a man named Aquila, who was an astrologer, and he was a defector. It says the defector takes his plans of revenge against the Christians to the rabbis. Listen to this. It is quite clear that Aquila's motives were, what his motives were. He was contemplating revenge on the Christian community for not accepting him along with his deceptive and forbidden craft. Thus, he took his proposition to the rabbis, who were anxious to hear his plan to further widen the gap between Messianic Jew and Jew. He wanted to produce a new translation of the scriptures, primarily differing only in the Messianic prophecies. In effect, Aquila said, I'll show you how to get rid of the problem of these repulsive Christians right at the source of their proofs. His plan was to retranslate the Messianic prophecies which were fulfilled by Jesus. These prophecies were originally predicted thousands of years ago by the Hebrew prophets in Hebrew and were translated to Greek more than 250 years before Christ. The original translation of the Bible into Greek, known as the Septuagint, was carried out by 70 rabbis trying to reach out to those portions of Israeli Jewry and Jews in the diaspora who could not read Hebrew. This Greek Bible was held in high esteem until the time of Aquila, which was 120 AD, and in fact was used to spread the Messianic message. The Messianic Jews would show traditional Jews the Messianic prophecies in the Old Testament, such as Isaiah 7:14, and explain the events which had transpired in Israel, proving Jesus' fulfillment of prophecy. Many were becoming believers. Realizing this, Aquila considered these scriptures dangerous. Thus, he set out to make his own translation, intending to create a barrier to Messianic understanding of the scriptures. He deliberately changed the wording of the Messianic prophecies. He took the word Christos in Daniel chapter 9, where in Daniel 9 verses 24 through 27, which is another incredible portion of scripture that gives us the exact time frame of the appearance of Messiah, which I'll go over in just a moment. He took that, and he also took Parthenos, virgin. They were removed by Aquila in a new fraudulent translation of the Greek Old Testament. He did this under the direction of Rabbi Akiva, one of, if not the most, anti-Christian rabbi of his day. All right, so that's enough. There is a Greek word for a young woman. It is neanis, and that is not the word that the original translators of the Septuagint chose for Alma in Isaiah 7:14. As I said, they used the Greek exclusive, or the version exclusive Greek word Parthenos. Okay, now, people will say the virgin birth and everything else about it comes from pagan mythology. This is something I saw recently from this so-called teacher. What he did was he took some footage from the movie called Zeitgeist. But the people who made that movie lied. Okay, you need to study for yourselves. You need to research these things for yourself. They made some comments. They made a list of these pagan gods and stated that they were all born of a virgin. They all performed miracles. They all had 12 disciples. They were all crucified. They all died and rose again on the third day. Okay, and none of that's true. None of that's true. One of them they said was Mithra, and Mithra was actually born from a rock, but when he was born, he was a full-grown man. That's not a virgin birth. There is no record of Mithra ever dying, so he couldn't have resurrected. And there was a number of other things they said that just flat out weren't true. However, I do want to point out to you that if you hear someone say, well, all of what we hear about Messiah in the Jewish writings and everything we hear about Jesus, Christ in Christianity, it's all just pagan mythology that's just wrapped up in some Jewish, Judeo-Christian flair. Well, there is a predating of stories in every civilization that talks about a Messiah figure who comes and he is born of a virgin. There's evidence of that. There are others they didn't mention, but there are those that they speak. He say he's a miracle. He's a miracle God-man. And he comes and he performs these miracles and he lays down his life. Where did they get all this? Well, in Haggai calls this one the desire of the nations. And in fact, there is a very elaborate story that is painted out to us in what Judaism calls the Mazarot, which is the Hebrew word for constellations. Now, I'm not talking about astrology. I'm not talking about fortune telling. There is an original purpose for the zodiac, and that is prophecy. It's quite an elaborate study, and I would recommend a couple of books because you do find it begins with a virgin, and anywhere you go in the world, you ask people, who is this up here? What is this Virgo? And they'll tell you she's a virgin. And one of her deacons is a young boy she's holding in her arms called Coma, which means the desired one, the desired one. But she remains a virgin. It's an elaborate story that goes all the way from Virgo all the way to Leo, who is vanquishing Draco, the serpent. So, not to get into this because it's an incredible study. I've read 2 books on the subject. One of them is called The Gospel in the Stars, and it's written by a man named Joseph A. Seiss. An incredible study. The other one is called The Real Meaning of the Zodiac by Dr. James Kennedy. I'm telling you, if you want to know why, if you want to have an answer for people when they say, well, why is there stories of a Messiah figure that predates the coming of the Messiah? It's because the heavens declare the glory of Elohim. That's why. Psalm 19, verse 1. Read Psalm 19, verses 1 through 4. The glory of the Father is the Messiah. And actually, in Arabic tradition, they say that God himself taught the meaning of the Mazarot to Adam, Seth, and Enosh. That's the Arabic tradition. It's ancient. And I'm telling you, it's an elaborate story, and I don't want to go off on that because that's a whole nother study. But it is truly incredible. And it's the answer as to why you have a predated story of a Messianic figure. Okay, now, Isaiah 7:14. Going back to this, nobody can add to or take away from the books of Moses. Moses wrote in Deuteronomy 12, verse 32, do not add to or take away from these words. Well, that includes prophecy. And that includes everybody from Joshua to Malachi and from Matthew to Revelation. No one writing after Moses can come up with some brand new idea that is not somehow embedded in the books of Moses. Because the books of Moses are the seedbed. Really, it's Genesis, the book of Genesis, more than any other book, is the seedbed for all prophecy. If you cannot find it in seed form, then it is not a true prophecy. So the first place we get the idea of a virgin birth is not Isaiah 7:14, but Genesis 3:15. Genesis 3:15. Let me read it to you. Genesis 3:15. It's all the way back here. All right. This is what it says. Back here further. Okay. Several places I've got stuck here in the Bible. All right. Genesis 3:15 reads this way. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. It shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. All right. Seed of the woman, a phrase that mystified the rabbis. Mystified the rabbis. And let me share with you an ancient commentary in case somebody wants to say this has nothing to do with Yeshua. This has absolutely nothing to do with him. Genesis 3:15, an ancient commentary. And this is from Midrash Rabbah 23, verses 5 and 6. It says, Rabbi Tanhuma said in the name of Samuel Kozith, she hinted at that seed which would arise from another source, the King Messiah. Where did they get the idea this was about the Messiah? Well, it's what they say. It's what they've always said. This is ancient, by the way. Midrash Rabbah is ancient. And there happens to be an equidistant letter sequence in Genesis 3:15 that's mind-blowing. From the Yud, in the phrase, it's Ashit, which is the phrase for I will put, there is a 69 equidistant letter sequence. You count from left to right, from the Yud, in Ashit, from left to right, and it will spell out Yud, Shin, Vav, Ayin. So the codes are giving us the exact name of this seed of the woman. Women don't have seed. That's the mystifying thing about this verse. And it is prophetic. It is the seed prophecy for Isaiah 7:14. All right. Moving along. Let's see. All right, back to the law of first use. Where is the first place that we find the word for young maiden in the scriptures? Well, I'm glad you asked. Because it's Genesis chapter 24. And we find it in verse 28. This is what it says. This is the account of Rebekah. And this is phenomenal. Listen. In Genesis 24:28, it says, and the damsel, that's the word Alma, the damsel ran and told them of her mother's house these things. This was Eliezer who had come to the well. Okay? And this is the first place we see the word Alma. But in this chapter, if you flip back to verse 16, this is what we read. And the damsel was very fair. Now, the reason why I say Alma is not in this verse, it was actually in 28, but the word for young girl is used here. Another synonymous term in Hebrew thought from the use of the law of first use. All right. The Na'ar, the damsel, was very fair to look upon, a Betula. So we have a connection here in the very first use of the word Alma, that this Alma spoken of in Isaiah 7:14 is in fact a Betula, a virgin, just like the translators of the Septuagint said she was. All right. Now, interesting point, which we'll go a little bit further on this. There is a code embedded in Genesis 24:16 that is mind-blowing. It's very rare. I mean, it's rare enough that all of these are, 1 in 50 quadrillion that they would happen by chance. But this one is is extremely rare. And the reason why is this. First of all, you go to the term ha'ana, which is to the well, and you start with ayin. Now, this is a big one. It's going to take some time to count this one out. All right? I've done it. If you want to take the time to do this, you should really prove this to yourself. Start with the ayin, and you count every 386th letter from left to right. And what you get is Yeshua's name spelled backwards, starting from the ayin. Now, to the well. Interesting. But there's adjacent letters. This is what makes it so rare. There's adjacent letters to the spelling of Yeshua's name, and those adjacent letters spell out the name Yonah. Jonah. Well, boy, the plot just thickens now, doesn't it? Why? Because Yeshua told them in his day, there's only one sign that will be given to you, that I have authority to do these things. And that's the sign of Yonah. Yonah, who was, of course, in the belly of a fish for 3 days and 3 nights. But it's also more than that, because Yonah means dove. And when Yeshua was in the waters of the Jordan, John the Baptist said, I saw the Spirit descending upon him like a dove. So he too saw the sign of Yonah upon Messiah. And it's in the codes. Another amazing thing, the fact that this is a 386 equidistant letter sequence. Well, that's amazing because, you see, when you use the standard gematria, there's different ways to count gematria, but the standard gematria for Yeshua's name brings us to this. The Yud is 10. The Shin is 300. The Vav is 6. And the Ayin is 70. When you add this up, it equals 386. So the skip distance of these letters is the gematria of Yeshua's name. Now, where else do we find the word Alma? Using the rule of studying common common phrases, common words, it's Gezerah Shiva. What do we find the Torah telling us other than what we found here? Well, the next place we find the word for damsel, Alma, is in Exodus chapter 2, verse 8, the account of Moses, who again is taken from the water. Interesting, all these connections. Exodus 2, verse 8 says, and Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go, and the Alma went and called the child's mother. Well, there's so much here. First of all, taking Moses out of the water, he was a type of Messiah, wasn't he? Salvation was drawn forth in a sense, just like it's told to us. Just like it's told to us in the verse in Isaiah 12, verse 3, therefore with joy shall you draw water out of the wells of Yeshua. Okay, so, but what else is the Torah telling us here? This little girl, Moses' sister, her name is Miriam. So the Torah is telling us the name of the Alma. Also, when it says the child's mother, it doesn't give the name of Moses' mother. It just says the child's mother. And this leaves it vague for a reason. Why? Well, according to comparison of common words and phrases, the child's mother takes us back to the mother of us all, the first mother, which again brings us back to Genesis 3:15, the seed of the woman. And there's more. There's more, which I'll just briefly touch upon. But for a more extensive study on this, go to JerusalemCouncil.org and read an article by my friend Israel Betzalel. He's written an article there called Messianic Apologetics and the Virgin Birth. And he extensively goes into this, which I'm not going to take the time to do in this video. But every time she has a child, first of all, she says, I've gotten a man from the Lord, from Yahweh. Okay. She didn't say, I got him from Adam. So it's as if she knew that there was a promise, that promise that was given. She was expecting the Messiah. But every time she had a child, it shows us what the Messiah won't be. Cain was a murderer, so the Messiah will not sin. Abel died, but he did not rise from the dead. He stayed dead. And Enosh, her next son, had natural children. Look what it says in Isaiah 53 about Messiah, who he will not see natural offspring. So there's a lot to it. Go and study that if you want to get further understanding on that. It's quite a good teaching from Israel Betzalel. Let's see. I want to cover a few more things. One of them was in Daniel 9:26, which I said gives the very time frame of the Messiah. We're given the exact birthplace in Micah 5, and we're given the exact time frame of Daniel 9. So let me share this with you. I heard a man say that Daniel 9 has nothing to do with Yeshua, another so-called teacher of our days. Oh, it has nothing to do with Yeshua. Absolutely nothing to do with Yeshua of Nazareth. Interesting. Because in Daniel 9, verse 26, where it talks about the 77s are decreed for your people, it talks about how the Messiah will be cut off, he'll be killed, and it will all happen before the temple and the city are destroyed. So that scripture right there tells us that according to the fact that we know the temple is destroyed and Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 AD, that Daniel, if he's a true prophet, is telling us the Messiah has already come. The temple's not here. It's been destroyed. So if Daniel is a true prophet, and he is, then the Messiah had to have come when he said he would come at the end of the 490 years, the 77s. All right. But in Daniel 9:26, there is a 26 equidistant letter sequence. And what is the significance of this besides it being a coincidence, right? Coincidence of it being the same number as the verse. 26 happens to be the standard gematria for the sacred name. The tetragrammaton, Yud, Hey, Wow, Hey, is 10, 5, 6, and 5, 26. But from the Yud in the phrase, Va Ha'ir, and the city. Take your Bible and do this for yourself. Do this for yourself and prove it to yourself, please. Take your Hebrew Bible and go from the Yud in Va Ha'ir and count left to right. And you'll find 4 times. Do it 4 times and you'll spell out Yud, Shin, Vav, Ayin. Messiah's name is given right there in the codes. Right there. Now, interesting point. And I think I'm going to wrap up at this point. Yes, I am. That's it. This is the last thing. There's another reason why Isaiah used the term Alma, young maiden. That is something else I wanted to cover. Let's talk about that real quick. He mentions the fact that he'll be born of a virgin. And 2 chapters later, in Isaiah 9, he's got more to say about this child. In Isaiah 9, he talks about the child who is to be born. He says, "For unto us a child is born." Isaiah 9, verse 6. "Unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end." Well, first of all, the very first name by which he will be called, which is translated wonderful in our English language, is also translated as wonder. It's also translated as miracle. The Hebrew word is peleh. It's peleh. Now, this is fascinating because when Jacob wrestled with the angel, he asked him his name, and he said, "Why do you ask my name?" The very same thing that was said by the angel of the Lord when Samson's parents were visited by this what theologians call a theophany or Christophany, because it was Messiah in his pre-incarnate. It was Messiah in his pre-incarnate time, before his pre-incarnate time, before he came in the flesh as Yeshua of Nazareth. This is what most theologians have said for centuries. This is not just some angel, all right? And here's the proof of it. When Samson's parents asked him, "What's your name?" he said, "Why do you ask my name? It is Peleh." It is Peleh, the very same name that's given about the child, a miracle. So people say, "Well, that's impossible. The virgin birth is impossible." It's a miracle. Everything about the Messiah is outside of natural law. Everything about him is a miracle. He is a miracle. All right, so there's that. But there's also this. Well, there's a couple things, actually. But let me read to you. Well, I'll tell you this first, and then I'll go to the commentary, the ancient commentary on this verse, because somebody will tell you, oh, this doesn't have anything to do with Yeshua of Nazareth. Well, of the increase, this phrase is lech marbeh. Now, there's a textual oddity that is in that word, a textual oddity, and scribes would leave textual oddities alone, like the broken vav in the word for shalom, in the account of Pinchas, who was, filled with the zeal of the Lord, and he put those two to death, from the man that brought the Midianite woman, and he was having sex with her, and Pinchas rose up and took a javelin through both of them. And the account tells us that there was a covenant of peace. But see, there's a vav that's broken. That's the way Moses wrote it. And the scribes have left it that way from the beginning. Well, there's a textual oddity here as well. You see, the mem inside of lim marbeh is closed. It's supposed to be open. Mems are supposed to be open. I'll show you the difference. Okay? When written in script form like this, that's the way a mem is supposed to look. There's an open space here. But when it's written at the end of a word, there's another form. And there it is. That's the way it's supposed to be, only when it's the end of a word. However, when Isaiah wrote it, he put the mem sophit in the middle of the word, lim marbeh. Why? Well, every Hebrew letter represents something. One of the things that the mem represents is a womb. And so to further this understanding of he'll be born of a virgin, he puts a closed mem where there should be one that's open, representing an unnatural means by which this child shall be born. Peleh, a miracle. Now, let me read once again from Messiah Conspiracy, where he has compiled a number of ancient commentaries. And this one is on page 95. So let me find that for you, and I'll read it. The commentary on Isaiah chapter 9. Anybody learning anything here today? I hope so. Like I said, please share if you have. Because there's a tide of false teaching that we have to fight against. We're in a real war, folks. Most people do not study for themselves, and they're going to listen to somebody that looks good and has a Hebrew name. We need to stop that. All right, so here it is. The commentary for Isaiah 9, verses 6 and 7. From Targum to Isaiah, it says this. The prophet said to the house of David, for unto us a child is born, to us a son is given, and he shall receive the law upon him to keep it. And his name is called from eternity, Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, continuing forever, the Messiah. For peace shall be multiplied upon us in his days. Now, final point. The word Alma in Hebrew is also the Aramaic word for eternity. So this is amazing. Think about it. For unto us a child is born. But Isaiah 7:14 says that a Alma, from Alma, a virgin, eternity, shall conceive and bear a son. Where am I going with this? Well, this takes us directly to Micah chapter 5, verse 2. If you have your Bible, take a look at that. Micah 5. It's verse 1 in Hebrew Bibles, but in our English Bibles, it's verse 2. And this is what it says. But you, Bethlehem Ephratah, though you be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of you shall he come forth unto me that is to be ruler of Israel, whose goings forth have been from of old. And that's the Hebrew word olam. In Aramaic, it's alma, from everlasting, from days of eternity. In other words, he doesn't have an origin. Why? Because he's God. Oh, I know people have a problem with that, but you need to get your theology straight. It wasn't created by the Catholic Church. Okay? The Son is equally God as the Father is. Oh, he never called himself God. Yeah, well, the Father calls him God. Read Hebrews chapter 1, verses 8 and 9. Read it. Paul is quoting from Psalm 45, verses 6 and 7. Therefore, God, your God. He calls him God. The Father, the scriptures call him God. Read it for yourself and tell me. Tell me if I'm wrong. Go ahead. Put your comments in. All right? He's born from eternity. Now, let's take a look at this verse and talk about the codes. Micah 5, verse 2, verse 1 in the Hebrew Bibles, is exactly 77 letters. And this is amazing. It's a verse that has exactly 77 Hebrew letters in it. What is 7? 7 is the number for perfection. When you've got double 7, it's perfection, perfection. I mean, undeniably. But in this verse that has 77 letters, there is a 7 times 7 code. It's a 49 equidistant letter skip. And what does it tell us? It says this, from the 4th yud, and this is a short one, 49, it's not hard. You can find this for yourself. From the 4th yud in Micah 5, verse 2, we just read, count from left to right, and you will spell out Yud, Shin, Vav, Ayin, Yeshua. So, we're done. That's what I had to share. And I hope that you will click like and subscribe and share with others. I know this was a bit lengthy. I usually go a few minutes, but we went about, 36 minutes on this one. I hope it helps somebody, and help a friend. Pass it on. We'll see you at the next video. Shalom.